I used to read books one at a time, and then I learned what is now my signature method, which is reading in pairs, and I literally can't go back, and here's why. When you read books in isolation, here's what happens. You finish a classic novel, it's intense, you feel something, it makes you think, and you're excited about it. But then what? One text will absolutely give you a great reading experience, but your brain needs a pattern to build lasting understanding. So, my signature way to read, which I learned in grad school and is carried into how I teach, is to learn and read in pairs of texts. So, instead of reading Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights alone, I read it alongside feminist criticism about anger and women's rage. So, something like Women Who Run with the Wolves or Mad Woman in the Attic. Bronte shows us Catherine's fury as destructive and consuming, even pathological. She literally makes herself sick with it. And then the theory shows us why that narrative exists and how women's anger has historically been medicalized and how female rage gets coded as madness because it threatens patriarchal order. It's so much more than just a toxic love story. So, this is reading beyond consumption and it challenges that creeping brain rot for sure. So, you're not reading more, you're reading against something. And that friction is where the real thinking happens. So that's my approach. And now I teach women and girls to read fiction and theory and conversation because that's where true transformation lives. And if you're tired of reading books that feel profound, but you still want more from them, or if you're building a personal curriculum, join Girls School Book Club. We read in pairs every time. So follow for feminist literary theory and join us if you want to read like this. Link in bio.
Top 10 nonfiction books I've ever read, 5 through 1. D. Brown's Bury My Heart, A Wounded Knee. This is the story of the expansion of the United States of America into the American West, told from the perspective of the Native Americans. This is a heartbreaking story of how Native peoples tried to desperately preserve their land and their culture in the face of the relentless expansion of the United States of America and the tragedies that led to the events of the Wounded Knee Massacre. Wild Swan by Jung Chang. This was one of the best books I have ever read. 2 years ago, it was my book of the year. It is the story of China's 20th century told through 3 generations of the women of the same family. The grandmother who experiences the turmoil of the early 20th century, the collapse of the Chinese monarchy, the foundation of the republic, and the rise to power of Chiang Kai-shek. The mother who experiences the Communist Party coming to power and the turmoil of Chairman Mao's Cultural Revolution, and the daughter who begins to realize that the system around her may be deeply, deeply flawed. This is one of the best books I have ever read. It is a gripping and emotional story. Patrick Radden Keefe's Say Nothing. This is an inside look in the troubles of Northern Ireland, and it focuses on the events around the lives of a woman called Jean Conville, who's abducted by the Irish Republican Army. It draws on vast numbers of interviews with people from the very heart of the Republican movement, of the things that they did, of how they justified those things to themselves, and how they had to live with the terrible things that they had done. And now into the top 2 best history books I've ever read. Number 2, Simon Sebag Montefiore's Stalin, the Court of the Red Tsar. The image that we have of Stalin as this dour figure is completely wrong. He was, weirdly enough, a people person. He was able to come to power and stay in power because the people around him believed in the mission they had. It looks at the inside life of the people who populated the Soviet government, who made up the family that was the Kremlin, and their mission to create a completely different world, no matter what the cost, even if they were the ones who had to pay it themselves. A brilliant and gripping book. And the best nonfiction book I've ever read is Stalingrad by Anthony Beevor. The Battle of Stalingrad was the turning point in the Second World War. It was the moment where the German army, the Wehrmacht, was finally crushingly defeated by the Red Army. And from that point on, it was retreat all the way back to Berlin. This is one of those books that you don't read, you experience, you survive this. You feel the cold, you hear the bullets flying past you. You come to know and care about the people that it describes within it, and they live with you for the rest of your lives. If you're ever going to go out and buy one great non-fiction book, I would recommend Anthony Beevor's Stalingrad. You can pick all these books up by commenting book below or by clicking the link on my bio to find our curated reading lists. Follow Ancient to Recent for more book reviews and recommendations just like this.
Hi everybody, I just finished Algorithms to Live By, a book recommended to me by my friend Kine as the 12th book in a series where I'm trying to read 30 books recommended to me by 30 friends on TikTok in the year before I turned 30. I'm gonna get straight into it. This is a book that is genuinely changing the way I think. Like, literally. The premise of this book is that it takes foundational concepts in math and computer science, and it shows how we can use these concepts, these algorithms, these mathematical ways of thinking to better our lives. If you're a math or science person at all, then this book will be an absolute hoot. I was a computer science major in college, and so seeing things like sorting algorithms and data structures being applied to things in our everyday lives was really eye-opening. Two favorite chapters in this book had to be the first and last problem. The first one being what's called the optimal stopping problem, i.e. when should you give up, and the last one being this really fascinating chapter on game theory. You do not need to be good at math, I think, to enjoy this book. It's very good at taking these mathematical principles and showing how you can apply them to problems in all of our lives, whether that be finding a place to live, to dating, to working with people, to trying to better organize your life, or how to be as productive as possible. So yeah, I think if this sounds interesting, you should pick it up. It's probably the most engaging self-help book I've ever read. But anyways, now I'm gonna pick out our next read. And the person picking out our next read is going to be Walter Masterson. And Walter's book is right over there.
So this is one of my favorite books, The Sellout by Paul Beatty. It is a very dark, scathing social satire. The premise is the main character is a black man who is on trial in front of the Supreme Court for bringing back slavery and segregation. So it is heavily satirical. One of my favorite books, one of my favorite writers, very talented writer. Can't say enough about it.
I've got The Sellout right over here, ready to read. At 289 pages, reading 27 pages a day, it should take me 11 days to read this book, which means if I start tomorrow, June 27th, I should be done by July 7th, which means I should be back here on July 8th to talk about the book, as well as to pick out our next read. Bye-bye.
Read Around the World, my 5 favorite books so far. For those of you new to me, I'm on a quest to read a book by an author from every country in the world in alphabetical order. I have finished the A's and the B's. There were 11 A's, 17 B's, so I'm at 28 books. These are my 5 favorite picks. Coming in at number 5, we have The Orphan Sky by Ella Leia for Azerbaijan. Just a gorgeous, lush novel about a musician in Azerbaijan who ends up immigrating to the United States. I just love this book so much. It was so lyrical and beautifully written. Number 4, for Belgium, I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. Is it sci-fi? Is it dystopian? Is it just a total mindfuck? It's amazing. Number 3, from Armenia, 3 Apples Fell from the Sky by Narine Abjarian. Just a quirky, fun, cozy novel. It takes place in a remote mountain village that's just connected to the cities below by a telegraph, and it's the aging population after wars, and such a sweet, unexpected love story. Highly recommend. I gave this one to my mom for Mother's Day. In the number 2 slot, we have Secondhand Time from Belarus by Svetlana Alexievich. She's won the Nobel Prize, well earned. This is non-fiction, unlike anything I've ever read. It's more oral history, but beautifully written and put together, and it shows the transition of the former Soviet Union. It's the transition years after the fall of communism, and it is just, I've never thought about communism this way before. If I could push this onto everyone. It is a chunkier book, but it's a fast read, because once you get in, you do not want to put it down. And my number 1 favorite book so far, Brazil, The Posthumous Memoirs of Brás Cubas by Machado de Assis. He's my new favorite author. The book sparkles. It's effervescent. It is so witty and erudite and well written. Please, please, please pick up this book. Or I'm right now reading Dom Cosmoro. Maybe pick up that book and catch up with me. Oh my God, Brazil. What a treasure.
Booktok. Let's go over some 6-star books. Books that completely, utterly shattered my 5-star rating scale, and books that need to be in your TBR. Before we get into the books, I know a lot of you follow me because I recommend straight bangers on here. However, it is very rare that a book gets a 6 stars. Very rare that a book transcends everything that I've expected from a 5-star book. And these 5 books right here fit that category. Let's get into it. To kick it off, we have The Sword of Kagan. This book made me into a Emma Wang fan club #1 member. This Japanese inspired fantasy just takes you by storm. There's so many things involved in this, so many emotions that this draws out of you, and is related a lot to Avatar Last Airbender, which I can see that, but this one right here was a 6-star for me last year. It's my #2 read of the year last year, and this transcended everything. Like, I was expecting one thing from this book, and I ended up getting some personal development from this book. I shed a thug tear in this book. Sword of Kaigen, 6-star, no question. Next up, we have The Hero of Ages. The Hero of Ages was my #1 read of last year, my first 6-star read of last year, and it is the third book in the Mistborn trilogy, written by the OG Brandon Sanderson. This book just, after I finished reading this book, I couldn't read anything for 2 weeks. In a good way for this book, and a bad way for other books, because this book tied up such a great series, such a great first part of the series, because there's a second part of the Mistborn series, which I will be getting to later this year. But this book, it just took everything that the first 2 books had, combined it into a great ending, and it was one of those endings where I was happy with the ending. And I don't want to ruin it, I don't want to go into spoilers, but The Hero of Ages, 6 stars, because normally when series ends or parts of series ends, you're left with so many questions, you're left with more things, but this one right here was a great nip of it. And like I said, 2 weeks, I couldn't read anything for 2 weeks. Couldn't read anything 2 weeks because of this book. Hero of Ages, 6 stars solidified. Next up, we have The Will of the Many. The Will of the Many was one of my 6-star reads from last year too as well. And I know everyone is getting around to it now, and reading is taken by storm. But last year when I read this with no context, no nothing, I was completely enamored with not only the characters, not only the world building, just the story itself, how the story was told, the point of view the story is told from, the magical system. This book right here, and I read this book after The Sword of Kaigen, which I didn't think a book could stack up to The Sword of Kaigen. And while Sword of Kaigen is a 6-star, and this is a 6-star too as well, it's like a 1A, 1B. This one right here was such a great read, and I am waiting for Strength of the Few, which is the second book in the series, and hopefully it comes out sooner rather than later. But The Will of the Many last year transcended that 5-star ranking for me, and I highly recommend. This should come to no surprise for anyone who was following me on here. Words of Radiance is my #1 read of all time, so of course it's a 6-star. It is the second book in the Stormlight Archive, and I know I joke about The Way of Kings being a prologue, and I appreciate The Way of Kings, but this book right here makes me appreciate not only Stormlight Archive, but Brandon Sanderson in general. Character development was insane. The battle scenes were insane. The world building was insane. Yes, it was 1,300 pages, but this was the fastest 1,300 pages I've ever encountered in my entire life. The Words of Radiance, my #1 read of all time. It surpassed and debunked Prisoner of Azkaban, which was my favorite book of all time, just because that's what got me into reading. Words of Radiance is going to be very hard to compete with this. I mean, again, I don't know if I can give 7 stars, but this is a solidified 6-star favorite book of all time, Words of Radiance. If you haven't gotten the Stormlight Archive, I highly suggest it. Patience, but once you get to this, you will understand why. If you know, you know. Journey Before Destination, Words of Radiance, solidified. And finally, Project Hail Mary. Project Hail Mary is not like the first few books, because first few books were fantasy. This is a sci-fi, but this sci-fi got me into sci-fi. Solidified 6 stars. This story right here, I don't want to ruin it. Just know that there are some characters in this, and particularly one character in this that you would ride for. You would call up all your troops and you would ride for. And that character, if you know, you know, makes this book into a 6-star, because it's a journey of 2 unlikely comrades as they try to save every single thing in this universe. Insane. Project Hail Mary. And I heard they're making a movie about it. I need to see that. And I heard the audiobook is so much better than a physical book. I need to listen to that. However, Project Hail Mary in this form was amazing. And the story still sticks with me today. And like I said, I ride for that character. I mean, I can say his name, Rocky. I ride for Rocky. Project Hail Mary, 6 stars, no questions asked. And there you have it. 5 books that transcended their elusive 5-star and end up being 6 stars. My question to you all is, have you ever read a 6-star book, a book that completely shattered your scale? Let me know in the comments so I can definitely check it out, and let me know if you agree with these 2 as well. And as always, everyone, happy reading.
There are books in my life that I literally know who I was before I read that book and the person that I became after I read that book, and this is going to be the nonfiction edition because there are definitely events occurring in our world that I think we all need to be more educated on. So let's get into it. First things first, if you did not already know, I am fundraising for the Soffin family as part of the Operation Olive Branch and Aaron Hadimer's Project Pass the Hat. So if you have $5 or $10 to give to this family, please give it to them. Their donations have stalled. There's basically just been kind of like $200 that has come in for the past couple of days. The second thing is that I just joined the Creator Fund, so please stay here, watch this whole video, do all of the things along the side. All of the money that I make from these videos will be sent to the Soffin family, literally until they make their goal. That's the only reason I joined that Creator Fund. The United States has always funded state violence, and this is a book about Guatemala, genocide, and forensic anthropology. I don't know what to tell you. I have been telling you to read this for so long. Please do. I don't know what else to say. I'm not ashamed to admit that I was once not as good of a feminist as I am now. I think that that's okay to say because a lot of my feminism was rooted in the sort of popular white feminism, and this was one of those books that really helped me break that down. And I think that it's an absolutely incredible read and should be read by all. The center argument of White Tears, Brown Scars is that white feminism is a weapon of white supremacy, and yeah, I think it is, and I think you will too after you read it. If you want to learn how to read better, please just read this. Like, my goodness, it's just very well done. Naomi Klein, and I'll never meet her. If I did, I would probably shriek, but Naomi Klein, I will worship at her feet for the rest of my life. I think she is one of our most important social critics, and yes, I love her work.
If you only read 2 books before the end of the year, these two, okay? The Courage to Be Disliked, I know it sounds like very self-helpy, and in a way, I guess it is. When I tell you I just finished this yesterday, and I am going to go back and read it and get the workbook and do it, already, since I've been reading this, the way I feel about life and myself and the people around me, completely different. I genuinely want everyone to read this because I want you guys to have the perspective that I now have and feel the way that I now feel. Seriously, take this as your sign to read this. Now, second, How to Stay in Love by James Sexton. I'm sure you guys have seen some TikToks of him on a podcast. He was on the Lex Friedman podcast. He's a divorce lawyer. If you are in a happy relationship, read it. Even if you're not in a relationship, read it. I guarantee you it will dramatically change your relationship, friendship, whatever relationship you have, romantic, family, whatever. These 2 books combined, I'm not even going to read any other books for the rest of the year. I'm going to go back through these and apply these to my life because holy crap.
I'm going to give a 1-sentence-ish description of every classic I read for any people trying to get into new classics or classics in general. A man enacts the most intricate revenge plot for being imprisoned for over a decade. Our narrator commits a murder, and as a result of this goes through a very long philosophical and psychological crisis. A historical fiction novel about the Napoleonic War with Russia and its effect on the multiple main families of the book and the state of Russia itself. A woman in high society has an affair, and we see its effects on all parties involved. A multi-generational story of messed up families, the American dream, and a biblical retelling. A woman goes through a mental breakdown, and we get to see how it's treated in the time that it was written. A man finds himself caught between his love for a man and another woman. The story of a young black girl in the 1940s who prays every day for her eyes to turn blue, and the history of her family. A man who's about as pure as Jesus is launched into the unpure society of Russia. Space, drugs, and politics. A woman cheats on her husband multiple times. A book about a family of girls finding wives in the original Enemies to Lovers book. A man preserves his vanity at the cost of his humanity. A story about forbidden love, and I believe one of the first stories where forced proximity was a thing. A true story where a man goes on a road trip, and then another road trip, and then another road trip, and then another road trip. The devil comes down to Soviet Russia and wreaks havoc, and also some Punctious Pilot stuff. I don't know, it's Dracula, vampires and stuff. Peter Pan. A man travels the countryside buying dead serfs. A man receives a surgery to make him smarter. A man kills someone and is pretty chill about it. A man's arrested, but no one will tell him for what crime. A man goes to college and then stays there. A man goes buffalo hunting. Hunter S. Thompson goes to Vegas and does every drug under the sun. Something about a house and a family and the house getting old. Rich guy throws parties to impress girl.
The Pulitzer Prize in Fiction for 2023 was announced yesterday, and I'm so excited for both fiction winners. That's right, both. This year, the panel chose 2 winners for the fiction category to bestow this prestigious prize onto. First, one of my absolute favorite books of the year, Demon Copperhead. This is a masterful piece of writing from Barbara Kingsolver. Demon's voice is so unique, so authentic, and so endearing. His story will drag you in and, frankly, have you dreading each poor step he takes. Yet the beauty of this story will have you thinking about Demon long, long after you finish this book. The second award went to Trust. In a way, a typical selection for awards. It's experimental literature with a very unique structure. This book isn't plot-driven, but structure-driven. I found it creative, masterful, and a wicked commentary, but you kind of have to like the slog of a really literary book to get into it. Not everyone will enjoy this, but lots of people will, and it's a truly marvelous piece of writing.